this station, we're going to be scientists, and we're going to look at life in a water sample so that we can make inferences about water quality in the Escondido Creek. And I know a lot of the teachers that we work with do teach them the word inference, but you should probably test them and say, does anybody know what inference means? So does anybody want to take a stab at it?
Something you don't know for sure, but based on what you do know, you can make a guess.
Yes, exactly. So it's looking at some evidence and making a guess. Okay, so we're going to be, again, looking at life in a water sample. So on the tables, there's petri dishes that have some aquatic invertebrates. Don't say insects necessarily because scuds aren't insects. You can say insects if there are scuds in your samples and you know that. But so we're going to look at the life in there. But before you start, we're going to show you how we get these samples. So if there's time, you can actually take them out to the creek and get the sample and come back. But you only have 25 minutes, and it's easy to spend 25 minutes just looking at the petri dishes. So I would just show them the video. And this is a video that the Rangers made. High production. I usually tell the kids like it's starring Tom Cruise's stunt double or something like that.
Which one is Tom Cruise?
Hopefully it'll work. There's a volume here on the right. It says volume plus in case you didn't know how to work it. And then hopefully it'll work now. It's not working. So the problem is, I think this is probably Wi-Fi, and it is supposed to communicate with the TV, but they don't always communicate well together. So it's not working. So I usually do try to discourage the kids from sitting at the table until after they've watched the video because they get distracted looking at the petri dish anyway. So when we actually do it, we'll have chairs here, and we'll tell them, don't sit at the table yet, we'll do that later, come up and sit up front. So if the sound bar isn't working, they can still hopefully hear. So we're going to take a look at the sample. Before we do, there are a few points I'd like to go over with you. So we're making inferences based on life, and we're going to do that based on what category of life they are. So we have some species that are tolerant species. So tolerant, that's a big word. Does anybody know what that means? And when I ask, I guess we were doing this with 6th graders, and I found that every single class had at least one kid that knew what tolerant was. If they don't know, you can say, has anybody ever heard of lactose intolerant? And most kids have heard the term, even if they don't have somebody in their class that hasn't. You say, okay, so if you're lactose intolerant, what does that mean?
You can't have milk.
You can't have milk, yeah. You can't tolerate it, so you can't handle it. So these are things that are pollution tolerant. So, well, I kind of just gave it away. When you're talking about water quality, what are some things that you might need to be tolerant to?
Pollution.
Pollution, there you go. Okay, great. So the midge and the blackfly, and we'll have one of these laminated on the table. So you'll say the midge and the blackfly are tolerant, so that means they can handle pollution. What do you think the semi-tolerant species, how do they handle pollution? What do you think?
Kind of not very well.
Better than others. Better than others. So they can handle it up to a certain point, and then if it's too much, they can't tolerate it. Now, what about the intolerant species?
They can't.
Can't. Yeah, they can't. If it's a little bit polluted, they can't really handle it. So we're going to use our identification sheets, and they'll also have hand lenses, like little magnifying glasses, and they'll look inside, and in their journals, there's things that they see.
So, how many kids are there going to be in each group?
There'll probably, so it's up to 60 kids, and there are 5 stations, so there are 5 groups. So it could be up to like 12 kids, but ideally less. Like on the 10th, we only have 30 kids for the whole group. So it'll be like 6 or 7.
Hand lenses.
We will have hand lenses. I don't know if we'll have them in time for the one on the 10th, but we will.
Harbor Freight, we can get them for, and they're not great,
But there's some.
but they're like $2.
Yeah. Often Acorn Publishing too, once you start getting them in.
I got some funding for this program, so that will all
So there'll be perhaps two kids per,
There may be actually chairs on both sides, so maybe potentially 4 per table, but ideally.
no, yeah, I meant per,
One, no, it'll be one student, they'll each have their own petri dish.
We just add another table.
okay.
Well, no, not even, like, we've done it with like 16 kids, and we'll just put, there'll be 4 chairs, and the kids will sit here, and they'll have one here and here, and
Okay.
based on their identification sheet. They'll take little tally marks. This thing about the type, tolerant, semi-tolerant, intolerant, that's just them looking at the sheet and then putting the circle in here just so that they can make that correlation over. But after they've all tallied it, I tell them, okay, if you finish tallying, take the time to draw your specimens in these circles here. And after everybody's done, they've taken their tallies, they've drawn their specimens, I say, okay, let's start with the tolerant species. Hold up with your fingers in one hand, how many people had midges? And like people say, like, I had like 1 midge. So, did anybody actually in your samples, does anybody have a midge?
I've never seen one.
Midges look like black flies, but they can be red, they can be green, they're a little bit, they don't have that like, that black fly booty. They're a little bit more like,
They're not a sessile organism, they don't suction, they move around, is that?
yeah, well, actually, I'm not sure if they, I would imagine they don't. It doesn't look like they have a structure, they don't have
Yeah, they look kinda like.
black flies. So, 4 black flies, that's it? Really?
Okay.
Well, I think it's.
Okay,
Does
so,
the midge and the black fly look the same?
no, but they're both tolerant species.
What
But
is
the black fly has more of a black fly booty, I call it, because like that.
Okay.
They have like a bulbous suction.
Okay, I see that.
And you'll have these sheets in front of the kids,
Yeah.
so they'll be able to see the difference.
And I'm sorry, I skipped a step, but before we even start the counts, I asked them to tell me their hypothesis of whether they think the water is clean, semi-clean, or polluted. And then we start doing these counts. So how can we do that again for black flies? I think I saw, so 2, 4, 8, 10, 11, how many? Oh, 13, okay. So we would all in our journal, we'd write down 13 for the black fly larva.
So it's not for individuals, it's a group count.
It ultimately becomes a group count. Yeah, maybe I can make 2 columns, one for the individual and one for the group. Okay, and then for mayflies, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Do you have 5 of them, Sean? Okay, what was that, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay, so 18 for the mayfly. Hold up your fingers if you have a caddisfly. Nobody. I think I saw one somewhere. But it's okay. We'll just say no. Okay, so 0 caddisfly. Hold up your fingers if you have a scud. I don't think anybody has a scud. Hold up your fingers if you have a stonefly. So you actually will. Everybody thinks that the mayflies are stoneflies. So you can get them to differentiate because, well, you should probably do this before you get to the point where you're counting people's species counts. But the stonefly and the mayfly, so you can ask them, what do you know? Look at those 2, compare them. What are the differences that you observe?
Tail.
Oh yeah, you guys don't have them. Sorry.
The tail, one has 3 long tails, stonefly only has 2.
Yes, okay, so you can see that the mayfly has 3, kind of like an M for mayfly. Stonefly just has 2. However, if it's a really small mayfly nymph, sometimes that middle prong doesn't develop. Sometimes you'll see a little nub, but sometimes you don't see it there. But spoiler alert, we don't have any stoneflies in the creek. So I tell them, if you think it's a stonefly, it's most likely a mayfly. Okay, so how many mayflies do we have, or stoneflies? No stoneflies. Okay, do we have any dragonflies? Sometimes we do get dragonflies, but I don't think we have any today.
I don't see.
They're pretty large.
Yeah,
Yeah.
got one on Saturday sample. What about the damselfly? None.
No.
Okay, sometimes they will get those, but they'll be low, like maybe 1, maybe 2. So, okay, based on our data, what inference can we make about the water quality?
It's not bad.
Yeah,
It's clean enough to support a certain species composition.
exactly. So it's not totally polluted. If we only had black flies, that would be a problem, but we do see some of the semi-tolerant species. And actually, in many cases, they will see one or two of the intolerant species, so they can see that it's clean enough to support at least a small amount of those, but not a ton of them. Okay, so that's that station. Any questions?
Do we have them draw the?
Yeah, anytime there's a downtime, I ask them to draw everything they see. And give them time to just look at them and like really observe, because otherwise they just kind of glance at it. I'll also, I'll help some students, like if they think something's a stonefly or they can't tell if it's a black fly or a midge, I do have the microscope turned on and I'll take their sample, or I'll say, let's look at this under the microscope, I'll carry the kid over there, we'll look at it together, and then we can also direct the whole class over there to make a point if we need to about anything. Okay, good?
Are those sheets on each table?
There'll be a sheet laminated on each table. Yep.
Look at the things and just get involved with them.
Yeah, so again, I'll have chairs up here and don't let them sit at the tables right away because you'll lose them right off the bat. It's much easier to have them sit here, do all of your front loading information, and then when it's time